Can you imagine the feeling of planning the perfect family trip, full of expectations and dreams, only to discover that you've simply vanished off the face of the earth without leaving a single clue as to what happened? In October 2021, the Morrison family, James 42, his wife Linda 38, and their children Emma 12 and Lucas 8, left Chicago to fulfill a dream they had been planning for 2 years, an epic road trip along historic Route 66, that legendary highway that runs through the heart of America and represents freedom, adventure, and the essence of the American dream. James Morrison was a sales manager at a medical equipment company, a meticulous man who planned every detail of his family trips with the same precision he applied to his work. Linda was an elementary school teacher, known for her cautious nature and protective instincts with children. Together, they represented exactly the kind of American family you would expect to find exploring the iconic landscapes and historical landmarks along the Mother Road. The trip that should have been a celebration of family unity and an opportunity to create unforgettable memories turned into one of the most disturbing and inexplicable mysteries of modern American roads. 3 days after leaving Chicago in their silver Honda Pilot SUV, the vehicle was discovered perfectly parked at a scenic overlook in New Mexico, with the keys still in the ignition, the luggage organized in its proper places, and the cell phones of all family members still charged and working normally. But of the Morrison family, 4 people who minutes before were alive, breathing, planning their next stop, taking photos, laughing together, there was absolutely no sign. What you are about to discover may surprise you, because this case goes far beyond a simple disappearance on a deserted road or an accident during a family trip. Have you ever had that experience of driving with your family, completely absorbed in the conversation, the music, the scenery passing by the window, feeling that total security that comes from being surrounded by the people you love most in the world? That's exactly what the Morrison family was experiencing when something happened that turned their dream trip into a nightmare that remains unresolved to this day. The lookout point where the Honda Pilot was found wasn't an isolated or dangerous location. It was a popular tourist spot, frequented daily by hundreds of travelers who stopped to admire the spectacular landscapes of the New Mexico desert. During the day, there's always a movement of people, families taking photos, couples enjoying the sunset, motorcyclists taking a break from their journey. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect something sinister to happen in broad daylight. The discovery of the abandoned vehicle was made by a retired couple from Denver who stopped at the overlook for an afternoon snack. They noticed the SUV parked in the same spot for several hours, with the doors unlocked, but initially thought the family might have gone for a walk on the nearby trails. It was only when the sun began to set and the vehicle remained in the same place with no sign of its occupants that they decided to contact the local authorities. Stay with me until the end, because what the police found when they arrived at the scene will make you question everything you thought you knew about safety during family trips and about the hidden risks that can exist even in the most popular and seemingly safe destinations. The state of the vehicle when it was discovered defied any conventional explanation of accidents, medical emergencies, or even opportunistic crimes. Everything was organized almost obsessively, the luggage packed with military precision, the snacks still fresh in the cooler, the children's toys carefully stored away, and even more disturbing, a digital camera on the front seat with photos taken just 2 hours earlier, showing the family smiling and waving in a pose typical of happy tourists. But what truly made this case a priority for federal investigation, what transformed the disappearance of the Morrison family from a local tragedy into a mystery of national interest, was what investigators found carefully placed in the back seat of the SUV. Evidence that suggested what happened to this family goes far beyond any simple or accidental explanation. Now let's learn in detail who the Morrisons were, what motivated them to take this particular trip, and how a seemingly ordinary family became the center of one of the most complex and frustrating investigations in the recent history of disappearances on American highways. But before we delve into the story of this family that touched the hearts of thousands of people across the country, I need to share something important with you. When I started investigating cases like the Morrisons, I realized there's an incredible community of people who also care deeply about these mysteries surrounding missing families. These are parents who feel a pang in their hearts, imagining the despair of the Morrison children's grandparents, travelers who have reconsidered their own travel plans, and people like you who believe these stories deserve to be told with the respect and attention these families need. If this topic resonates with you, if you also feel that unease when you think about an entire family simply vanishing during a trip that should have been special, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Do you have children? And can you imagine the despair of not knowing where they are? Or perhaps you yourself have had strange experiences during family trips. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of serious and respectful, investigative content. And look, if you're feeling that emotional connection to the Morrisons story, if you can feel the weight of the responsibility we have to keep these stories alive until we find answers, click the like button below. That shows me I'm on the right track, bringing up cases that really matter and need public attention, so they're never forgotten. If you want to continue exploring with me these mysteries that affect real families, people like us who just wanted to experience special moments together, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I can guarantee that the investigation into the disappearance of the Morrisons will reveal aspects of our safety during trips that you never imagined. And I have other cases involving families that will make you completely rethink how we prepare for road trips. It is this community that we have built together that allows me to dedicate weeks investigating every detail, talking to authorities, analyzing evidence, and most importantly, keeping the memory of these families alive as we seek justice and answers. Every comment, every like, every new subscription is literally what makes it possible to continue honoring the story of the Morrisons and other families who deserve to have their voices heard. Now, returning to the case that brought us here, James Morrison was not only a devoted father, but also an obsessive planner who had researched every mile of Route 66 for months before the trip. A business school graduate from Northwestern University, he had built a stable career that allowed his family to save for 2 years, specifically to fulfill this dream of crossing the country on America's most iconic highway. James Morrison was not only a devoted father, but also an obsessive planner who had researched every mile of Route 66 for months before the trip. A business school graduate from Northwestern University, he had built a stable career that allowed his family to save for 2 years, specifically to fulfill this dream of crossing the country on America's most iconic highway. The transformation in the Morrisons' lives began during the pandemic, when James lost his job at the medical equipment company where he had worked for 8 years. Instead of despairing, he used this period of uncertainty as an opportunity to reassess family priorities. It was during the months of isolation that he and Linda made the decision that, as soon as he got a new job, they would take the trip they had dreamed of since the beginning of their marriage. Linda Morrison, a 4th grade teacher at Elmwood Elementary School, was known by colleagues and parents as someone who perfectly balanced discipline and affection. Her practical and organized mindset complemented James's dreamy nature harmoniously. She had taken on the responsibility of researching educational activities along the route, transforming the trip into an extension of the classroom for Emma and Lucas. The impact of this meticulous preparation on the family dynamic was evident in the weeks leading up to the departure. Emma, at 12 years old, had become the family's official chronicler. Documenting all the planning in a diary, she intended to turn into a family travel blog. Lucas, 8 years old, had memorized facts about each state they would cross and was particularly excited to see the Grand Canyon and the rock formations of Arizona. The journey planned by the Morrisons was not an impulsive adventure, but a carefully orchestrated family project that reflected the values and dreams shared by 4 people who genuinely enjoyed spending time together. James had created a detailed itinerary that included 15 major stops along 2,448 miles, from the skyscrapers of Chicago to the beaches of California. The behind-the-scenes preparations revealed a family that had invested as much emotionally as financially in the trip. Linda had requested unpaid leave from school, James had negotiated remote work with his new employer, and the children had spoken with teachers about school projects they could develop during the trip. It was the kind of planning that demonstrated that the Morrisons weren't running away from their lives, but celebrating them. The revelations about their last communications paint a picture of a completely happy and united family during the first days of their trip. Linda's Instagram showed daily photos of the family at iconic Route 66 locations, always smiling, always together, always demonstrating the kind of genuine joy that can't be faked. The last post, made on the morning of the day they disappeared, showed the four of them embracing in front of a vintage Route 66 sign with the caption, "Day 3 of our American adventure. The kids are loving every minute." The decision to extensively document the trip through social media revealed a family mindset that valued sharing positive experiences with friends and extended family. Emma had created a TikTok account specifically for the trip, posting short videos of sights and funny family moments. Lucas frequently appeared in these posts, always excited, always curious about the next destination. The text messages James sent to his parents on the morning of his disappearance demonstrated the absolute normalcy of a family on vacation. "We're having a great time. The kids can't stop talking about yesterday at Cadillac Ranch. Arriving at the Grand Canyon tomorrow as planned. Send our love to Grandma." The language was casual, affectionate, completely devoid of any indication of problems or worries. The family's original itinerary was ambitious but realistic, spreading the 2,148 miles over 10 days to allow for proper exploration of each significant stop. James had booked hotels in advance, researched family-run restaurants along the route, and even identified hospitals and emergency services in case of medical need during the trip. The hidden truth about the Morrisons' preparations is that they revealed a family that had invested not only time and money, but collective hopes and dreams in an experience that should further strengthen the bonds that already united them. There were no signs of marital tension, hidden financial problems, or any indication that anyone in the family might be planning an escape or breakup. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because the way the Morrisons' SUV was discovered at the New Mexico overlook reveals details that have completely transformed investigators' understanding of what really happened to this seemingly perfect family on that fateful afternoon. Comment below, Dream Family, if you're also realizing how the Morrisons represented exactly the kind of close-knit and happy American family that makes their disappearance even more disturbing and inexplicable. The way the Morrisons' SUV was discovered at the New Mexico overlook reveals details that have completely transformed investigators' understanding of what really happened to that family on that fateful afternoon. The discovery occurred around 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, when Frank and Margaret Peterson, a retired couple from Denver who were on their own Route 66 road trip, stopped at the Painted Desert Viewpoint to watch the sunset over the colorful rock formations that give the place its name. The visual impact of the scene the Petersons encountered was both tranquil and deeply unsettling. The silver Honda Pilot was perfectly parked in a spot near the picnic area, positioned to offer the best possible view of the spectacular landscape stretching to the horizon. At first glance, it looked exactly what you would expect to see at a popular tourist spot. A family had probably stopped for photos and was exploring the area. The Petersons' initial perception shifted gradually. Frank first noticed that the vehicle's windows were slightly open, which was strange considering the outside temperature was close to 32 degrees Celsius. When they returned from their own photo shoot 40 minutes later, the SUV remained in the exact same position, with no signs of movement or people returning. Margaret's cautious mindset, honed during 30 years as an emergency room nurse, led her to suggest a closer investigation before calling the authorities. When they approached the vehicle, they discovered that the doors were not locked, but neither were they wide open, as would be expected if the family had rushed out for an emergency. The Petersons' investigative journey around the SUV revealed details that immediately raised alarm bells. The engine was off, but the keys were in the ignition, in a position that suggested someone had deliberately placed them there, not that they had been forgotten during a hurried departure. The air conditioning was off, but the slightly open windows suggested an attempt to maintain air circulation inside the vehicle. The behind-the-scenes details of this initial discovery included observations that Frank and Margaret only later reported to investigators. The interior of the SUV was organized in a way that defied natural explanation. Luggage was arranged with military precision in the trunk. Snacks were arranged in the cooler, as if prepared for a presentation. And the children's toys were stored in their respective backpacks in an obsessively orderly fashion. The decision to contact the police was made when Margaret discovered the family's cell phones neatly placed in the center console, all with their protective cases removed and arranged in a perfect row. For someone experienced in medical emergencies, this artificial organization was a huge red flag. People in panic or emergency. Situations simply don't organize cell phones so meticulously. The revelations about the initial impressions of the local police began with Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez, a 15-year veteran of the San Juan County Sheriff's Department. When Rodriguez arrived at the Overlook at 7:45 p.m., his expectation was that he would find evidence of a family that had gotten lost while hiking on nearby trails or that had suffered some kind of medical emergency. Rodriguez's understanding of the gravity of the situation changed within the first 10 minutes of his inspection of the vehicle. What disturbed him most was not what was missing, but how everything that was present had been arranged in a way that seemed almost ritualistic. The family's digital camera was positioned on the front seat to display the last photo taken on its LCD screen. A selfie of the whole family smiling, time-stamped just 2 hours earlier. The hidden truth about this artificial organization is that it suggested deliberate planning on the part of someone who had enough time and composure to methodically arrange the interior of the vehicle. This contradicted scenarios of violent kidnapping, sudden accidents, or medical emergencies that would have resulted in the chaotic abandonment of the vehicle. The impact of this discovery on Rodriguez's investigative mindset was immediate. He had responded to hundreds of calls involving abandoned vehicles during his career, and he knew the difference between abandonment, resulting from a genuine emergency, and abandonment that followed deliberate patterns. The Morrisons' SUV clearly fell into the latter category. The most disturbing observations came when Rodriguez examined the area around the vehicle. There were no footprints in the soft earth to indicate that the family had gone out to explore nearby trails. There were no signs of a struggle or disturbance in the surrounding vegetation. There was no evidence that luggage or belongings had been hastily removed. From the vehicle, it was as if 4 people had simply materialized elsewhere, leaving behind an SUV arranged with the precision of a showroom display. Rodriguez's decision to request specialized reinforcements was motivated by his previous experience with cases that initially seemed simple but revealed unexpected complexities. The obsessive organization of the vehicle's interior, combined with the total absence of physical evidence of where the family had gone, created a pattern he had never encountered in 15 years of police work. Now I want to delve even deeper into this matter, because what the forensic technicians discovered when they were finally able to thoroughly examine the interior of the Morrisons' SUV revealed evidence that transformed this family disappearance case into something far more complex and sinister. What forensic technicians discovered when they were finally able to thoroughly examine the interior of the Morrisons' SUV revealed evidence that transformed this family disappearance case into something far more complex and sinister. The initial forensic analysis, conducted by a specialized team from the New Mexico State Police, began the morning after the vehicle was discovered and immediately revealed aspects that defied any conventional explanation of what had happened to the family. The shift in understanding the case occurred when forensic technician Sarah Chen began processing the digital evidence found on the family's cell phones. What she discovered in the last recorded activity on the devices painted a disturbing picture of a family that had been systematically monitored and possibly manipulated in the hours leading up to their disappearance. The impact of these digital discoveries was immediate and alarming. James Morrison's cell phone showed that he had received a series of text messages from unregistered numbers during the 2 hours before his disappearance. The messages were seemingly innocent, directions about nearby tourist attractions, restaurant suggestions, offers of guided tours, but closer analysis revealed that they all originated from cell towers located in a geographical sequence that suggested the sender was tracking the family. The investigative journey through digital data revealed that Linda Morrison had also received similar communications, but through social media applications she used to document the trip. Apparently genuine profiles of other Route 66 enthusiasts had commented on her posts with specific suggestions about places to visit, always directing the family to more isolated and remote areas of the route. The mindset behind this coordinated communication suggested a sophisticated operation that had identified the family as a target and was systematically influencing their travel decisions. Forensic technicians discovered that the suggestions received by the family had resulted in last-minute changes to the original itinerary, including the decision to stop at the Painted Desert viewpoint, which was not in the initial travel plans. Behind the scenes, the forensic analysis of the vehicle revealed even more disturbing physical evidence. Applying luminol to the SUV's interior detected microscopic traces of human blood in multiple locations. On the steering wheel, the rear seat belts, and surprisingly, on the interior door handles. The amount of blood was minimal, suggesting superficial injuries or nosebleeds, but its distribution indicated that all 4 family members had been affected. The most shocking revelation came when investigators discovered what had been carefully hidden under the SUV's back seat. Wrapped in clear plastic was a set of 4 used syringes, labeled with alphanumeric codes that did not correspond to any known commercial medication. Preliminary analysis of the syringes revealed residues of an unidentified chemical substance that had sedative properties. The hidden truth about this discovery is that it immediately elevated the case to federal jurisdiction. The presence of unidentified controlled substances, combined with evidence that an entire family had potentially been drugged before their disappearance, met the criteria for an FBI investigation into suspected organized kidnapping that crossed state lines. The decision to classify the syringes as top priority evidence was made when preliminary toxicological analyses revealed that the substance found had properties similar to drugs used in human trafficking operations, compounds that cause deep sedation but leave victims conscious enough to follow simple instructions. The physical evidence from inside the vehicle told a story that no investigator wanted to accept, but which was impossible to ignore. The obsessive organization of the luggage was not the work of the Morrisons, but of someone who had had the time and unlimited access to the SUV to stage a scene that suggested a voluntary departure rather than a violent kidnapping. The impact of this finding on the investigation was transformative. Analysis of the luggage revealed that clothing had been repackaged using military techniques. Toiletries were organized by category in a way no family would do during a trip. And even more disturbingly, the children's toys were arranged in a way that suggested detailed knowledge of Emma and Lucas's preferences and routines. The most disturbing shift in understanding the case came when technicians discovered that the family's digital camera had been tampered with. After the last legitimate photo taken by the family, the device showed signs of having been connected to an external computer, and analysis of the image metadata revealed that photos had been selectively deleted, specifically images that could have captured people or vehicles that were monitoring the family. The forensic findings also included evidence that the SUV itself had been moved after the family's initial disappearance. Internal GPS analysis revealed that the vehicle had been driven in circles over an area of approximately 5 kilometers for a period of 40 minutes, suggesting that someone was awaiting instructions or coordinating with others before positioning the SUV at the lookout point. The investigative mindset had to evolve rapidly to accommodate the reality that they were dealing not with a spontaneous disappearance or opportunistic crime, but with a highly organized operation that had planned and executed the kidnapping of an entire family in a way that would initially appear voluntary or accidental. Now I want to delve even deeper into this matter because the discovery of the syringes and evidence of sedative drugs forced an immediate escalation of the case to federal investigation levels, revealing connections to patterns of criminal activity that go far beyond an isolated kidnapping. Comment below, this was planned, if you also realize that the forensic evidence shows a sophisticated operation that had access, time, and detailed knowledge about the Morrison family to execute a kidnapping that was disguised as a voluntary disappearance. The discovery of syringes and evidence of sedative drugs forced an immediate escalation of the case to federal investigation levels, revealing connections to patterns of criminal activity that go far beyond an isolated kidnapping. The shift in investigative approach occurred when FBI Special Agent Marcus Thompson took charge of the case and immediately ordered a comprehensive analysis of all digital and physical traces left by the Morrison family in the days leading up to their disappearance. The impact of this expanded digital investigation revealed disturbing aspects of how the family had been systematically tracked throughout the trip. Analysis of the SUV's GPS data showed that the vehicle had been consistently followed by at least 2 other vehicles since leaving Chicago, maintaining varying distances but never losing visual contact with the family for more than a few hours. The investigative journey through the family's credit card records revealed anomalous patterns that had initially gone unnoticed. James Morrison's last transactions included purchases at gas stations, where security cameras subsequently showed the presence of unidentified individuals who appeared to be documenting the family's activities. The hidden truth about these financial transactions emerged when investigators discovered that someone had tried to use the Morrisons' credit cards at ATMs located on the New Mexico-Arizona border approximately 6 hours after the family's disappearance. The attempts failed due to incorrect security codes, but security footage from the ATMs captured faces of people who did not match any member of the Morrison family. The investigative mindset had to evolve to consider that they were dealing with an operation that involved multiple people working in a coordinated manner. Analysis of security camera footage from the family's last documented stop, a gas station and convenience store called Desert Rose Travel Plaza, revealed details that completely transformed the understanding of the family's final moments of freedom. Behind-the-scenes footage from this video analysis showed that the Morrison family had arrived at Desert Rose at 1:47 p.m., exactly as recorded in the credit card transactions. External cameras captured James filling up the SUV with gas, while Linda and the children went into the store to use the restroom and buy snacks. Superficially, everything seemed completely normal. A family on a trip making a routine stop. The disturbing revelations came when technicians analyzed the images with advanced enhancement software. A dark sedan had arrived at the gas station 5 minutes after the Morrisons and remained parked in a position that offered direct visibility of the family's SUV. More significantly, the sedan's license plates changed between different camera shots, suggesting the use of fake plates or vehicle. Identification alteration devices. The decision to interview employees of the Desert Rose Travel Plaza revealed details that had been overlooked during the initial chaos of the investigation. Maria Santos, a 34-year-old attendant who had worked at the station for 6 years, clearly remembered the Morrison family, not only because they were obviously happy tourists, but because she had noticed something specific about their interaction with other customers. Maria's testimony had a significant impact on the investigation. She reported that while the family was in the store, 2 men dressed casually had asked them specific questions. They wanted to know if they were tourists, where they were traveling, and if they had mentioned any specific plans. Maria had found the questions strange at the time, but not alarming enough to take any action. The shift in understanding of the case came when Maria provided detailed descriptions of these men. One was tall, appeared to be in his 40s, with an accent she described as not from here, maybe Texan or Southern. The other was younger, shorter, but with a physical presence Maria described as intimidating, like someone used to being obeyed. Both paid for their purchases in cash and left immediately after the Morrison family left the gas station. The most baffling forensic evidence came when investigators applied advanced analysis techniques to the last images captured by the family's own cameras. The Morrisons' digital camera had been programmed to automatically take photos at regular intervals while driving, a function James had activated to document landscapes along the route. The journey through these automated images revealed that the family had been followed much more closely than initially thought. In the last photos taken before the disappearance, reflections in the rearview mirror showed vehicles maintaining a constant distance behind the SUV. Even more disturbing, some images showed the same vehicles in different positions, suggesting coordination between multiple pursuers. The forensic mindset had to adapt to process evidence that defied conventional explanations. DNA analysis of the SUV's interior revealed genetic material from at least 6 different people. The 4 members of the Morrison family, plus 2 unidentified individuals. The additional genetic material was found specifically on the door handles and seatbelts, locations suggesting that unauthorized persons had been in the vehicle. The most disturbing discovery came when technicians analyzed soil samples found on the driver's side floor mat. The soil contained specific minerals that did not match the geology of the area where the SUV was found, but were consistent with rock formations located approximately 80 kilometers to the south, in an area known for abandoned mining activity and limited access via unpaved roads. The hidden truth about this conflicting evidence is that it suggested the SUV had been moved to multiple locations before finally being positioned at the overlook. The vehicle had clearly been in environments that included industrial or mining areas, locations that were not part of the Route 66 tourist itinerary the Morrison family was following. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the analysis of this physical and digital evidence has led investigators to consider theories about the disappearance, ranging from sophisticated criminal operations to even more sinister possibilities about the fate of the Morrison family. The analysis of this physical and digital evidence led investigators to consider theories about the disappearance ranging from sophisticated criminal operations to even more sinister possibilities regarding the fate of the Morrison family. This shift in investigative approach forced the FBI to abandon conventional theories and consider scenarios that challenged its previous experiences with family abduction cases. The theory of organized kidnapping gained significant credibility when investigators correlated the evidence found in the Morrisons' SUV with known patterns of criminal organizations operating along interstate traffic routes. The impact of this correlation was that it revealed the family may have been specifically targeted, not victims of opportunistic crime. The evidence supporting the kidnapping theory included the presence of syringes containing sedatives, coordinated surveillance, documented through multiple sources, and the fact that the operation had clearly involved multiple people with sophisticated resources and knowledge of tracking techniques and evidence manipulation. The mindset behind such an elaborate operation suggested motivations that went beyond simple financial crime. The investigative journey through this theory revealed disturbing aspects of how contemporary criminal organizations identify and target families for human trafficking activities. Families like the Morrisons, attractive, well-dressed, traveling with children, represent valuable commodities for networks operating international black markets. However, evidence against the conventional kidnapping theory included the absence of ransom demands, the lack of subsequent communication from the kidnappers, and most significantly the discovery that James Morrison had discreetly liquidated some investments in the weeks leading up to the trip. These financial transactions raised questions about whether the family may have been facing economic pressures that they had not shared with extended family. The theory of a mass accident in the desert was quickly dismissed due to the complete absence of physical evidence to support this possibility. Extensive searches in an area of 100 square kilometers around the viewpoint, using drones, specialized rescue teams, and sniffer dogs, found no indication that the family had left the SUV to explore deserted areas where they could have had an accident. The hidden truth about why the accident theory wasn't plausible lay in the very characteristics of the Morrison family. James was known for his cautious nature. Linda had experience as a teacher keeping children safe outdoors, and Emma and Lucas had been specifically instructed on desert safety before the trip. The likelihood of such a prepared family exiting their vehicle in an isolated area without emergency equipment was virtually nil. The most controversial and psychologically difficult theory for investigators and extended family to consider was the possibility of a planned escape. The decision to explore this theory was motivated by the discovery of James's undisclosed financial transactions and by subtle changes in the family's behavior in the weeks leading up to the trip that only became evident through detailed retrospective analysis. The shift in understanding this possibility came when investigators discovered that James had been researching methods for establishing new identities and had visited websites about how to voluntarily disappear. Even more disturbing, Analysis of his personal computer revealed searches about countries that do not have extradition treaties with the United States, and about how to transfer funds to offshore accounts. The revelations about possible motivations for the planned escape included the discovery that James was facing an IRS audit related to irregularities in his income tax returns for the past 3 years. Linda had also been questioned by the school administration about discrepancies in funds for student activities that she oversaw. Although no formal charges had been filed, legal and financial pressures may have motivated desperate decisions. The mindset behind a planned family getaway would explain the obsessive organization of the SUV, the absence of signs of a struggle, and the fact that essential belongings, such as passports and important documents, were missing from the vehicle, even though James had told the extended family that all documents were locked in the glove compartment during the trip. However, evidence against voluntary elopement included the genuine love the family showed for one another, the absence of signs of marital tension, and most significantly, the discovery of sedative syringes, which suggested that at least some family members may not have voluntarily participated in any disappearance plan. The most sinister theory that emerged during the investigation was the possibility of a planned meeting with criminals that resulted in outcomes not anticipated by the family. This theory suggests that James may have agreed to meet with individuals connected to his financial or legal problems, but that the meeting took turns that the family had not foreseen. The impact of this theory on the investigation was that it combined elements of initial voluntary participation with subsequent involuntary victimization. James may have believed he was negotiating solutions to his legal and financial problems, but discovered that he had placed himself and his family in a situation of extreme vulnerability. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because investigations into other similar cases along Route 66 have revealed disturbing patterns suggesting that the disappearance of the Morrisons may be part of a much larger and more organized phenomenon than initially thought. Comment below. Several theories make sense if you also realize that the contradictory evidence in the Morrison case suggests that multiple explanations may be partially correct, creating a scenario where different aspects of the tragedy may have completely different motivations. The investigation into other similar cases along Route 66 revealed disturbing patterns suggesting that the Morrisons' disappearance may be part of a much larger and more organized phenomenon than initially thought. The shift in understanding the case occurred when Special Agent Thompson began analyzing historical data on disappearances along the historic route and discovered that the Morrisons were not the first family to mysteriously disappear in that specific region. The impact of this discovery was profound when investigators compiled information on at least 7 cases of families who disappeared along Route 66 between 2015 and 2021. All shared similar demographic characteristics: middle-class families with children, traveling in SUVs or minivans, making planned leisure trips that included extensive documentation through social media. The investigative journey through these historical cases revealed even more disturbing aspects. In 2018, the Rodriguez family from Phoenix, father, mother, and 3 children, disappeared during a trip along Route 66 toward Missouri. Their vehicle was found abandoned just 15 kilometers from where the Morrisons' SUV would be discovered 3 years later in the same condition. Perfectly organized, with no signs of a struggle and evidence suggesting it, had been carefully prepared to suggest a voluntary departure. The hidden truth about these earlier cases was that they had been investigated separately by different jurisdictions, preventing obvious patterns from being identified. The fragmented investigative mindset between counties and states had allowed a systematic operation to continue operating undetected for nearly a decade. Revelations about the dark history of certain stretches of Route 66 emerged when investigators began analyzing geographic data on criminal activity in the region. The area between Gallup, New Mexico, and Flagstaff, Arizona, precisely where the Morrisons disappeared, had been identified by federal agencies as a trafficking corridor for multiple types of organized crime. Behind the scenes of this criminal activity were smuggling operations that took advantage of the vastness of the desert and the low population density to move illicit goods between Mexico and American urban centers. More significantly for the Morrison case, the region had also been identified as an operating point for human trafficking networks that specifically targeted American families for international black markets. The shift in understanding these operations came when investigators discovered that sophisticated criminal organizations had developed methods to identify vulnerable families through social media monitoring. Families who extensively documented their travels, like the Morrisons, represented ideal targets because their routes and schedules were predictable and publicly accessible. The decision to interview veteran truckers who frequent Route 66 revealed consistent accounts of suspicious activity that local authorities apparently ignored or downplayed. Marcus Johnson, an independent driver for 20 years, described regular encounters with unmarked convoys operating at night, carrying unidentified cargo and exhibiting behaviors that suggested deliberate attempts to avoid detection. The impact of these testimonies on the investigation was significant because they revealed that informal knowledge existed within the community of professional drivers about anomalous activities in the region, but that this knowledge had never been systematically collected or analyzed by law enforcement authorities. The mindset of many truck drivers included a resigned acceptance that certain areas of Route 66 were controlled territory, where it was best not to ask questions about suspicious activity. Johnson reported multiple occasions where he had witnessed transfers of people between vehicles in isolated areas, always involving families who appeared to be under coercion or sedation. The most disturbing revelations came from a veteran driver, Patricia Williams, who had witnessed what she believed to be the actual kidnapping of the Morrison family. Williams reported seeing the Morrisons' SUV parked in a rest area approximately 2 hours before it was found abandoned at the overlook, surrounded by 3 other vehicles in a setup she described as a coordinated operation. Williams's journey through the testimony revealed details that correlated perfectly with the forensic evidence found in the SUV. She had observed multiple people transferring items between vehicles, including what appeared to be luggage and electronic equipment. More significantly, she had seen figures matching the Morrisons' descriptions being escorted between vehicles in a way that suggested they were not acting voluntarily. The turning point in the investigation came when Williams revealed that she had tried to report her observations to local authorities at the time, but was discouraged by a member of parliament who suggested that she had seen things that would be better forgotten. This official response suggested possible corruption or infiltration of criminal organizations into local law enforcement agencies. The hidden truth about the connections between these similar cases emerged when comparative analysis revealed that all involved families who had been systematically monitored through social networks all had received unsolicited suggestions about changes to their itineraries, and all had disappeared in areas where organized surveillance activity had been documented by independent witnesses. The impact of this correlation forced a complete reassessment not only of the Morrison case, but of the entire investigative approach to disappearances along interstate traffic routes. The possibility that a sophisticated criminal organization was operating an industrial-scale family kidnapping network represented a public safety threat that transcended local jurisdictions. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because the escalation of the Morrison case to a federal investigation has revealed aspects of the involvement of multiple government agencies and findings that remained classified for national security reasons. The escalation of the Morrison case to federal investigation revealed aspects of the involvement of multiple government agencies and findings that had remained classified for national security reasons. The shift in investigative approach occurred when the FBI recognized that they were dealing not with an isolated crime, but with a criminal operation that crossed state and possibly international borders, requiring resources and authorities that exceeded the capabilities of local investigations. The impact of federalizing the case was immediate and far-reaching. Within 48 hours of the FBI assuming primary jurisdiction, the number of investigators working on the case increased from 6 to over 30, including specialists in human trafficking, cybercrime, and domestic intelligence. This mobilization of resources suggested that initial findings had revealed connections to threats to national security. The federal investigation began with a comprehensive analysis of electronic communications that revealed aspects of the case never before shared with the public. Text messages received by the Morrison family in the hours leading up to their disappearance were traced to a network of cell towers operating on unauthorized frequencies, suggesting the use of military or intelligence communications equipment. The hidden truth about these technological discoveries was that they indicated the involvement of individuals or organizations with access to advanced government equipment. The investigative mindset had to evolve to consider possibilities that included not only conventional organized crime, but also the potential involvement of rogue elements within government agencies or defense contractors. The most disturbing revelations came when DNA analysis of syringes found in the SUV revealed matches with samples from unrelated federal cases in multiple states. These matches suggested that the same organization or individuals were operating a nationwide criminal network, using consistent methods and identical chemical substances. Behind the scenes of the federal investigation were discoveries that forced a re-evaluation of archived cases dating back more than a decade. When investigators applied new analytical protocols to old evidence, they identified patterns suggesting that the organization responsible for the Morrisons' disappearance had been operating for much longer than initially thought. The decision to classify aspects of the investigation was made when intelligence analysis revealed connections to human trafficking operations involving international networks with links to terrorist organizations and drug cartels. The impact of this discovery was that it transformed the Morrison case from a domestic criminal investigation into a matter of national security, with implications for American foreign policy. The shift in official approach came when multiple federal agencies, including the DEA, Homeland Security, and elements of the intelligence community, began coordinated operations based on information derived from the Morrison case. This interagency coordination suggested that the findings had revealed threats that transcended conventional crime. Revelations about connections to other ongoing federal cases remained highly classified, but unofficial leaks suggested that the Morrisons' disappearance was connected to investigations into trafficking networks operating along the Mexican border, using popular tourist routes to identify and capture American targets for international black markets. The mindset behind classifying this information was apparently based on concerns that public disclosure could compromise ongoing operations to dismantle larger human trafficking networks. However, this classification also had the effect of frustrating the Morrisons' extended family and preventing public transparency about the real risks faced by travelers on popular routes. The authorities' reluctance to share specific information with the public intensified when investigators uncovered evidence that the organization responsible for the Morrisons' disappearance had infiltrated aspects of local law enforcement in multiple states. This infiltration would explain why previous reports of suspicious activity had been discouraged or ignored by local authorities. The journey through these corruption discoveries revealed that the criminal operation used a combination of bribery, intimidation, and the strategic placement of people in positions of authority to protect its activities. Even more disturbing, evidence suggested that some public officials may have been providing information about ongoing investigations, allowing the organization to stay one step ahead of the authorities. The hidden truth about the extent of this infiltration emerged when an internal investigation revealed that information about the Morrison case had been accessed by unauthorized individuals, including employees in positions that should not have had knowledge of specific details of the investigation. This discovery forced the implementation of security protocols that drastically limited who had access to information about the case. The impact of this justified paranoia on the investigation was that it created a culture of secrecy that extended beyond legitimate operational needs. The Morrisons' extended family began receiving increasingly limited information about the progress of the investigation, creating frustration and suspicion about whether authorities were truly doing everything possible to find James, Linda, Emma, and Lucas. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because recent developments in the case and modern technologies applied to the investigation have revealed new clues that may finally be bringing investigators closer to answers about the fate of the Morrison family. Comment below It goes much deeper. If you're also realizing that the Morrison case revealed a network of criminal activity and possibly government corruption that goes far beyond what the public was allowed to know. Recent developments in the case and modern technologies applied to the investigation have revealed new clues that may finally be bringing investigators closer to answers about the fate of the Morrison family. The transformation in the status of the official investigation 3 years after the disappearance reflects both significant technological advances and ongoing frustrations with the complexity and scope of the criminal network that apparently orchestrated the kidnapping. The impact of technological advancements on investigations became evident when artificial intelligence algorithms were retroactively applied to thousands of hours of security camera footage collected along Route 66. This computational analysis identified vehicle movement patterns that human investigators had missed, revealing that the Morrison family had been followed in a coordinated manner by at least 5 different vehicles during their 3-day trip. The investigative journey through these new technologies revealed details that transformed the understanding of the sophistication of the operation. Facial recognition analysis applied to traffic camera footage identified at least 12 different individuals who appeared in multiple locations along the Morrisons' route, always maintaining distances that suggested coordinated professional surveillance. The hidden truth about these technological developments is that they confirmed investigative suspicions that the organization responsible for the Morrisons' disappearance operated with resources and coordination that rivaled government intelligence agencies. The mindset behind such an elaborate operation suggested motivations that went far beyond conventional financial crime. The most significant revelations came when new witnesses emerged through a public campaign launched by the Morrison children's grandparents. Martha and Robert Morrison, James's parents, established a website and social media presence dedicated to keeping the case in the public eye and encouraging witnesses to share information they might have hesitated to report to authorities. Behind the scenes of this family campaign, deep frustrations with the lack of transparency in the official investigation were revealed. Martha Morrison, retired from a career as a librarian, applied her research skills to create an independent database of information about the case that often contained more specific details than official reports made available to the public. The family's decision to take a more public approach resulted in contact from multiple witnesses who had never been interviewed by official investigators. One particularly significant discovery came from Angela Rodriguez, manager of a hotel in Tucumcari, New Mexico, who reported seeing the Morrison family in her hotel lobby the night before their disappearance, even though the hotel was not on the family's official itinerary. The shift in understanding the case came when Angela provided specific details about the family's interaction with other hotel guests. She had observed James Morrison having an intense conversation with a man she described as well-dressed but intimidating, while Linda and the children waited nervously in the reception area. The conversation lasted approximately 15 minutes and ended with James appearing visibly disturbed. The impact of this new testimony was that it suggested James had had direct contact with representatives of the organization responsible for the kidnapping before the family's disappearance. This supported theories that James may have been trying to negotiate solutions to his legal and financial problems, but had placed himself in a vulnerable situation that extended to his entire family. The revelations about modern technologies applied to the case included the use of advanced isotopic analysis on soil samples found in the Morrisons' SUV. This technology allowed for precise identification of the soil's geographic origin, revealing that the vehicle had been in at least 3 different locations in southern New Mexico, including an area near the Mexican border known for smuggling activity. The investigative mindset evolved to incorporate these technological findings into a comprehensive theory, suggesting that the Morrison family had been transported to locations near the international border, possibly for transfer to trafficking networks operating between the United States and Mexico. The journey through emerging technologies also included metadata analysis of photographs shared on social media, which revealed that the last images posted by the family had been edited to remove background elements that could have identified suspicious people or vehicles. This digital manipulation suggested that someone with advanced technical knowledge had altered potential evidence before it could be analyzed by investigators. The extended family's efforts to find answers evolved from public awareness campaigns to sophisticated private investigations. The Morrison grandparents hired a team of private investigators led by former federal agents who used methods unavailable to official investigations, including infiltrating online communities where criminal activities related to human trafficking are discussed. The hidden truth about these private efforts is that they revealed information that apparently never came to the attention of official federal investigators. The private team identified communications on the dark web that specifically referenced Route 66 work and included descriptions that matched the Morrisons, suggesting that their kidnapping had been documented and possibly traded on black markets. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because 3 years after the disappearance of the Morrison family, we have reached the point of confronting the fundamental questions about what really happened to James, Linda, Emma, and Lucas, and what their stories teach us about the hidden risks that can exist even in the most American and seemingly safe experiences. 3 years after the disappearance of the Morrison family, we have reached the point of confronting the fundamental questions about what really happened to James, Linda, Emma, and Lucas, and what their stories teach us about the hidden risks that can exist even in the most American and seemingly safe experiences. The most profound transformation this case provokes is not just about a family that disappeared on a historic road, but about our understanding of the vulnerability we all face when we leave the safety of family to explore the world. 3 years later, 4 people remain officially missing. The Honda Pilot SUV was returned to the children's grandparents after years of forensic analysis, but the questions it raises remain unanswered. The vehicle now sits parked in the garage of Martha and Robert Morrison's home in Evanston, Illinois, a silent presence that serves as a daily reminder that some truths may be permanently beyond our reach. The hidden truth about the impact of this case on the American travel community is that it fundamentally transformed the perception of safety during family trips. Route 66, which should have been the setting for unforgettable family memories for the Morrisons, became the scene of one of the most disturbing mysteries on American roads, forcing thousands of families to reconsider their own travel plans and question whether they truly understand the risks they face. The emotional impact on the Morrison grandparents revealed aspects of grief and hope that transcend the specific circumstances of the disappearance. Martha Morrison, now 72, described the process of maintaining hope as learning to live in a reality where all possibilities remain open, including those you can't bear to consider. Robert, 74, channeled his frustration with the official investigation into an obsessive dedication to independent research that became his full-time occupation. The emotional journey the grandparents faced over the past 3 years included moments of renewed hope whenever new leads emerged, followed by periods of devastation when those leads proved inconclusive or were classified by federal authorities. This emotional roller coaster created a particular form of trauma that psychologists describe as ambiguous grief, the pain of losing someone without confirmation of death or closure. The mindset needed to process a case like this requires accepting fundamental ambiguity about aspects of human experience that we prefer to believe are controllable and understandable. The Morrisons were a real family with concrete plans, solid relationships, and a life that seemed stable and predictable. The fact that people like that can simply disappear without adequate explanation challenges our fundamental beliefs about order, justice, and our ability to protect those we love. The chart. Most profound revelations about this case don't come from the physical evidence or investigative theories, but from how it forces a re-evaluation of our basic assumptions about security, government transparency, and our ability to protect our families. The question that haunts not only the Morrison grandparents, but all of us who encounter their story, is deeply disturbing. How can an entire family simply vanish in broad daylight on one of the country's busiest routes? The shift in public understanding of this case reflected a gradual evolution from an isolated tragedy to a symbol of systemic vulnerabilities in our society. The The possibility that sophisticated criminal organizations are operating kidnapping networks that target American families during leisure activities represents an existential threat to our collective sense of security and freedom. The broader implications of this investigation suggest that cases like that of the Morrisons may not be isolated aberrations, but windows into realities about our society that normally remain hidden. The discovery that criminal networks may have infiltrated aspects of local law enforcement, that advanced surveillance technologies are being used to identify and target vulnerable families, and that human trafficking operations may be operating on an industrial scale along popular tourist routes is deeply disturbing. The decision to share the Morrison story is not just about documenting an unsolved mystery, but about honoring their humanity and acknowledging that behind every missing person statistic lies a network of relationships, dreams, and responsibilities that were abruptly cut short. James, Linda, Emma, and Lucas were not just names in a police report. They were real people who deserve justice, and their families deserve answers. The lasting legacy of the Morrison case may lie in how it illuminated gaps in our understanding of the forces at work in our society and the urgency it created to improve. Protection systems for traveling families. Their stories continue to inspire changes in security protocols, greater coordination among law enforcement agencies, and public awareness of risks that many families never considered. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the Morrison story leaves us with a collective responsibility to learn from their tragedy and work to protect other families from facing similar fates, even when we don't have all the answers we'd like to have. Write this down. We will never forget. If you also feel that cases like the Morrisons remind us of the importance of cherishing every moment with our families and never taking our safety for granted. The Morrisons' story leaves us with a collective responsibility to learn from their tragedy and work to protect other families from facing similar fates, even when we don't have all the answers we'd like to have. What strikes me most about this investigation is how it reveals that, even in an era of advanced technology and constant connectivity, there are still forces operating in our society that can make entire families disappear without leaving adequate traces. The Morrison story forces us to confront the reality that our sense of security may be more fragile than we imagine. But it also inspires us through Martha and Robert Morrison's tireless determination to seek justice for their loved ones. Perhaps the most important lesson we can draw from the disappearance of the Morrison family is the need to deeply cherish every moment we have with our own families, to question official narratives when they seem inadequate, and to support other families facing similar tragedies. James, Linda, Emma, and Lucas deserve to be remembered not only as victims of an inexplicable crime, but as real people who lived, loved, and dreamed until the moment their lives were cut short. The investigation into the Morrison case remains officially open, and the children's grandparents maintain hope that one day they will have answers. Meanwhile, their story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of perseverance in the face of the unknown and the unconditional love that motivates us to never give up on those we have lost. If you've made it this far with me on this intense and emotionally challenging investigative journey, you understand that this is not just the story of a mysterious disappearance, but a reflection on vulnerability, determination, and the importance of keeping alive the memory of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Comment below, justice for the Morrisons, if you also feel that cases like this deserve our continued attention and that we should never stop searching for the truth, even when it seems unattainable. Click like if you value this type of investigation that honors both the victims and their families, and that goes beyond superficial facts to truly explore the human impact of the mysteries we encounter. It is this engagement that allows me to continue dedicating the time and resources necessary to tell these stories with the respect and depth they demand. If you want to continue exploring these mysteries that remind us of the fragility and preciousness of family life, subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring investigations that challenge us to think more deeply about our safety and our responsibility to one another. There's a video over here about another disturbing case of a family that disappeared during a camping trip, and it bears unsettling similarities to the Morrison case. Click and stay with me there because, unfortunately, these stories are connected in ways we're still trying to understand.